Hello, welcome to another installment of Tech Talks, a regular series produced by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Technology Engagement Center. Tech Talks bring together policymakers and business leaders to talk about how we can make technology work for Americans. My name is Jordan Crenshaw. I am the Senior Vice President of the Chamber's Technology Engagement Center, or CTEC. Today, we're going to really get into how some in industry are working to bridge the digital divide and how congressional leaders are working to ensure we have a thriving tech and communications ecosystem. First, I would like to introduce Representative Bob Latta. He chairs the House Subcommittee on Communications and Technology and represents Ohio's 5th District. Congressman Latta has been a champion on issues like rural broadband and autonomous vehicles. Thank you for joining us today, Congressman.
Well, thanks very much for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, I mentioned broadband, and there's been a lot of discussion, and a lot of hearings have been done about broadband recently, but also recently Congress enacted the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Part of that bill is the BEAD program, which is designed to get broadband to areas of the country that lack service. What are your thoughts on how BEAD is currently being implemented by the administration?
Well, first, everybody needs to realize, BEAD we're talking about a lot of money here. It's over $42 billion, and this is being, of course, distributed across the country. And one of the things I really want to make sure is, as we go forward, is first of all, to have that oversight of the NTIA. And number two, we want to make sure that we're getting into the unserved areas, not underserved or areas that are served currently. Because what we want to make sure is that our people out there that don't have broadband have broadband. So that's very, very important. When you talk about that $42 billion being distributed, that's why I said we have to have the oversight of the NTIA as we go forward. And looking forward to the hearing that we're going to be having today on the 5th. Because it's important that we have it. The other things that I think is important to point out is that when they did the infrastructure bill, they didn't do anything about on the permitting side. And I think that was a really missed opportunity that was out there that should have been done. Because again, without that helping reform permitting, it's not going to be a smooth transition. And I think the other areas that we have to think about is sometimes what happens in Washington that they don't think about what the real world is like is, okay, how are you going to implement this? And as I've been around, not only my district, but around Ohio, first of all, do we even have enough people out there to install? And that's one of the big problems that we're having right now. And so from our community colleges that are stepping up, it's important that they're there. Another issue that a lot of people would never even think about is if you have trucks with buckets on them, how are you going to get the from pole attachments and anything else up? Well, that's another problem because it might take 18, 24 months right now to get a truck. So, with BEAD, I think it's really important that we look at that this is something that is very, very important that we get everyone connected. We saw during COVID how important the connectivity was. A lot of schools sent their kids home during COVID with laptops, but there was only one snag. They didn't have the connectivity to do their homework. And we also know from telehealth to businesses, to people just staying connected with loved ones, how important it is.
I think you bring up excellent points. Oversight is critically important. I know, especially as we've heard about states wanting to impose things like rate regulation, and you bring up an excellent point too about permitting. You can throw all the money in the world you want at broadband, but if you can't get the permits to do it, those dollars can't move. And so it's an excellent point you bring up on that front.
Well, just another point right off the bat is that as we're looking at this, and I've emphasized this multiple times with the NTIA, that the federal government should not be out picking winners and losers. Anytime the federal government decides what's best out there for a community, it's usually going to be a bad situation. So it's going to be, how can we get this out there as fast as possible? And not only as fast as possible, the best way as possible, in the most economical way. Because again, the federal government, if it starts saying that we only want X, and there's multiple other technologies out there, then the country is going to lose in this.
Excellent point about tech neutrality there. The administration also has been getting involved in spectrum and released a memo on spectrum policy. Can you evaluate where we stand on spectrum as a nation?
Well, on spectrum, it's absolutely essential that we have it. If you think about a country like communist China, they just dictate it. And so when we look at the our spectrum out there and maybe trying to find areas that we might be able to share some spectrum or free up some spectrum, those are where all the discussions are taking place. But in the other areas, of course, is that when we talk about the spectrum auctions that we have to have in this country to do things like pay for the rip and replace to make sure we don't have untrusted equipment in our networks. Well, this is going to be a year that the United States has not had any spectrum auction ever, first time in history. So it's important, again, that we really look at making sure that we look at every avenue that we have out there with spectrum that, and again, it's having all the departments and agencies sitting down together and saying that, look, we just can't say that I don't want to share something or I think I might need it in the future. It's important that we have, that discussion now. And as we go forward, that because we don't want to fall behind. And, it's just like several years ago, I asked the question, like with 5G, I'd say, where's the United States at in 5G? And all I heard was, oh, we're way ahead. As time went by, that started to slip. It's like, well, we're doing fine. And then it was like, well, we might be even to today where we might be falling behind other countries in the world. So, spectrum and spectrum management is so important. And so I want to make sure that we have the discussions and the oversight to get that done.
Now, we've talked a little bit about broadband. We've talked about spectrum, the infrastructure and the radio frequencies needed for that connectivity. But, regulation's also part of it. And recently, the Federal Communications Commission adopted rules around digital discrimination, and will soon be voting on restoring Title II or somewhat public utility type regulation of broadband. Is FCC's approach on these the wrong one?
Well, absolutely, in my opinion, that you just have to go back to 2017. When the net neutrality was rescinded at that time, this is what I asked my staff. I said, not only here in Washington, but also across the district, I said, my 3 district offices, I said, I want you to report everybody that calls the day after that the net neutrality was rescinded. I didn't receive a phone call. And I think it's important to point out that, number one, that, we want the private industry out there being able to do what it does best, and that's to, provide for the public. You shouldn't take a 1930 statute and say that everything that's always been, quote unquote, it's information. And until just Tom Wheeler coming in when he became chair, that they said, oh no, we're gonna regulate under Title II. We had about a $1.7 trillion investment leading into COVID. Over $2.1 trillion overall have now been invested. That when you think about the dollars out there, what's happened? And I think it's, again, you look at with what the United States was able to do during COVID. Our speeds went up, our costs went down. We were able to provide more internet to more people at, again, at those faster speeds. So everything that they say that they would happen if the government got more in control, first of all, things are going to get worse. And because you're going to see a pullback from the private side, because again, they're going to have to be meeting these regulations, and again, which we don't need. So I think it's important that we again take this net neutrality head on again. Again, we don't want the government taking control. This is something that's been built up on the private side. That again, the COVID is the best example. As I've said, we've been able to keep moving forward. When other places around the world, especially during the COVID pandemic, all of a sudden they saw things slowing down, but not here. We were able to do more, and that was because of the private sector.
Excellent points. And it'll be really interesting to see what FCC does in light of the major questions doctrine at the Supreme Court, that case coming out earlier this year. I think I want to switch gears, though. You have been a strong leader on autonomous vehicles, going all the way back to the Self-Drive Act. We actually recently released a study showing that AVs really will have significant potential to make our roads safer and provide tremendous economic benefits. Where do we currently stand on AVs?
Well, it was back in the 115th that my piece of legislation, self-drive, it passed the House. It came out of committee unanimously. We had a voice vote on the floor, which is, I couldn't believe it. And as the bill went over to the Senate, unfortunately, there were some outside groups over there that influenced, and the bill didn't move forward. So, it's important that we do get this bill through. Right now, we have the draft legislation out there. I want to get this bill moving as soon as possible, because we had, when you think about what's happened in our country, auto deaths are going and traffic accidents are going up. And when you have over 43,000 people that lost their lives due to accidents in the past year, that's unacceptable. And what we want to make sure is that when we cover everything, once again, we want to make sure that these cars are as safe or safer than anything that's on the road today. We want to make sure that we have cybersecurity, we have the privacy. We also want to make sure that we're helping those groups out there, like senior citizens, that might become housebound when they have no transportation, that they have that ability to still get out. And also for people that have a disability. I know that back in the 115th, my vice chair in the committee, his son has a disability, and if he or his wife weren't home, he couldn't get to work. So it's important that we get it done. And the other thing is that the Chinese are testing in this country right now. When you think about having 3 different companies out in California testing, they're from communist China. They're not waiting; they're going forward. But again, we want to make sure that these are as safe or safer than anything on the road. And I've always said this: it's safety first, safety last, safety always.
Well, I want to get into another technology that we're also in fierce competition with China on, and that's artificial intelligence. We can't seem to have a conversation in DC these days without getting into AI. Recently, we released a study called Empowering Small Business, and it talked about the benefits of technology and how small businesses are using tech. And what we found in that is that nearly 1 in 5 Ohio small businesses are already using AI, and nearly half are worried about a patchwork of AI and privacy rules. Can you tell us how your subcommittee is looking at AI in terms of connectivity and other issues there?
Well, we've had an AI hearing in our subcommittee, and in fact, Kathy McMorris Rogers, who's the chair of the full committee, is making sure that all of the subcommittees, I know that we had one recently in our health subcommittee on AI and, all the things and the attributes that can happen from it. And so when we look at it in the communications and technology sector, it's making sure that we, can help control, the absolutely awful robocalls that are out there, making sure that we can protect our children and with AI. And we want to make sure that we have the privacy, and this is kind of a 2-step process, have the privacy portion of it done as we move into the AI, because again, we don't want to have the federal government hampering a technology that can do good. And that's why I've always said that serving on the Energy and Commerce Committee, when you sit up on the dais, when we have our witnesses before us, it's one of these things that we're looking over the horizon 5 to 10 years. And so when you see what can happen with the attributes with the AI, it's the future. But we want to make sure that, again, we have those safeguards out there to protect the public. And you're absolutely right. We can't have a patchwork of 50 states and the District of Columbia having their own AI/privacy laws out there, because what it'll do is it'll be the small companies and the medium-sized companies, they're going to have a real problem. And because how do you hire enough attorneys and everybody else who's going to be try to get you in compliance? Because everything's, as soon as you do something, it's going across all 50 states.
No, very, very excellent points, and appreciate the need for getting a good privacy bill right first, and then dealing with some of the AI issues and addressing preemption and a patchwork. So really appreciate your thoughts there. Congressman, anything you'd like to leave us with before you go today?
Well, just this. I think that it's important that we always hear from everyone in the private sector, because again, we cannot craft good legislation unless we hear from all of you. And so I've always said this, that my door is always open. So please, anytime, let us know, especially with, you have ideas for legislation, or you're concerned or want to work on legislation that's before the committee, just to let us know, because again, we do our best work when we hear from you.
Congressman, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your leadership.
Well, thanks very much, and have a great day.
Next, we're going to hear how one American company is working to ensure Americans are connected. I'd like to introduce Leslie Barnes. Leslie is Senior Director of Government Affairs at Qualcomm. Leslie previously worked as an advisor at the Federal Communications Commission. Leslie, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Leslie, can you tell us some of the ways that Qualcomm is innovating to connect Americans?
Sure. And first off, I want to thank Representative Latta for his very informative and insightful comments, and for participating in this discussion to bridge the digital divide. So Qualcomm has helped to bridge the digital divide on multiple fronts. We are a developer of wireless technologies that provide a practical and cost-effective alternative to fiber deployments. Specifically, we are a pioneer of 5G cellular technology that is used in many deployments of fixed wireless to provide that high-speed broadband connectivity to your home or to your business. And with the deployment of 5G fixed wireless, you get the added benefit of mobile connectivity when a user device is within range of a cellular tower. Plus, when you include millimeter wave in a 5G fixed wireless deployment, you could potentially get gigabit speeds over the air. And so we've been engaging with state broadband offices to educate them on the benefits of 5G fixed wireless, emphasizing the need for states to choose the technology that best suits their local needs. And in some cases, that could be a fiber deployment. But when that fiber deployment is impractical or cost prohibitive, fixed wireless is a great alternative. And the BEAD program also acknowledges this as well. In the program's Notice of Funding Opportunity, it calls out fixed wireless with just using licensed spectrum or a hybrid of licensed and unlicensed as a reliable broadband service. So we're excited to work with states to help bridge the digital divide. And Representative Latta said it best. The impact of COVID showed how important broadband connectivity is in America. And we hope states will take a technology neutral approach in looking at what technology best suits their local needs. Lastly, I want to put a quick plug in for our corporate responsibility program called Wireless Reach, which is aimed at bringing advanced wireless technologies to unserved communities globally. Since the inception of the program in 2006, the program has positively impacted over 25 million people worldwide. And we actually have a project going on in DC in partnership with the George Washington University that seeks to address health equity issues in traditionally socioeconomically disadvantaged areas of DC. The focus of this project is to equip medical professionals and patients with the skills and knowledge to effectively use health technologies, including telehealth services. So with this project, we're not only helping to bridge the digital divide, but we're also helping to improve health outcomes locally.
No, that's fantastic work, and really glad to hear all the great work Qualcomm is doing in that front. And I think you brought up an excellent point about the need for tech neutrality in the implementation of BEAD and the notice of funding opportunity. And there are a variety of different approaches like fixed wireless. There's fiber, you said too, there's satellite, there are other options as well, but really showing that there are options out there available for communities to take up as they're looking to connect their constituents. So, obviously you all are doing a lot of great work in that front. But, as I said with Congressman Latta, not a conversation in DC without a conversation on policy. And, what are some of the things that policymakers can do to help spur further broadband investment and innovation?
That's a great question. And there are so many things. First off, the SEC has a number of ongoing proceedings that could certainly help spur broadband investment and innovation. For example, the Commission recently permitted very low power unlicensed devices to operate in certain portions of the 6 gigahertz band, specifically Uni 5 and Uni 7. And these devices can operate anywhere, indoors and outdoors, without being under the control of a frequency coordination system. In the accompanying notice of proposed rulemaking, the Commission proposed to allow these same devices to operate in the remaining portions of the 6 gigahertz band, Uni 6 and 8 specifically. We'd like to see the Commission open up this remaining portion of the 6 gigahertz band quickly and to enable that full 1200 megahertz of spectrum in the 6 gigahertz band, because it will enable larger channel sizes that could increase speed and decrease latency. And these capabilities will facilitate the deployment of innovative use cases like personal area networks and AR/VR headsets and wearables. And as a further to spurring broadband investment and innovation, additional spectrum is needed. The National Spectrum Strategy, which was recently released by the White House, identified 7.125 to 8.4 gigahertz band for near-term intensive study for potential repurposing for terrestrial wireless broadband. And there are a variety of mission-critical federal operations in this band, which could make repurposing challenging, but it also highlights the need for collaboration in spectrum management, as Representative Latta mentioned. So particularly when you're looking at these upcoming studies, one thing to highlight as an example is the assumptions that go into the modeling for the studies. That really calls the need for collaboration between commercial stakeholders and federal incumbents.
No, I think you brought up an excellent point. The Congressman Latta also mentioned is the need to really get behind a national strategy on spectrum, and really great to hear your viewpoint there. Also just wanted to let you know, obviously the World Radio Communications Conference is occurring this year. Are there any things that you all are hoping to see from that conference this year?
Yes, and just to quickly plug in what the World Radio Conference is, in case the listeners aren't familiar with it. It is a global intergovernmental conference held every 4 years by the International Telecommunication Union, with delegates representing more than 160 countries, including the US. And together, these delegates meet and may elect to update or revise the radio regulations that govern allocation and use of spectrum. So from Qualcomm's perspective, at WRC 23, which is currently underway in Dubai, the conference is considering, as part of future agenda item 10, proposals to identify frequency bands for mobile terrestrial use. Specifically, CTEL has advanced a proposal requesting studies in the 7.125 to 8.5 gigahertz frequency band for commercial licensed wireless use. Similar proposals have also been submitted by other countries, including India, Laos, Vietnam, and the Arab Spectrum Management Group. And ultimately, we hope these proposals are successful, as these studies will lay the groundwork for the deployment of future technologies like 6G. The 7.1 to 8.4 gigahertz band is a prime 6G target band. And domestically, there have been efforts to identify additional spectrum for terrestrial wireless broadband. The mobile industry and Chairwoman Rosenworcel from the FCC have identified the 7 to 15 gigahertz spectrum range for next generation wireless technologies like 6G. And as I mentioned before, the White House's National Spectrum Strategy identified 7.125 to 8.4 gigahertz for that near-term intensive study for potential repurposing for terrestrial wireless broadband. So it's an exciting time for spectrum. And as a wireless technology leader, we are paving the way for the next generation of wireless technologies, including 6G, working with our industry partners, associations, and academia.
Leslie, fascinating. Any parting words or any other final thoughts before we go today?
Yes, Qualcomm fully supports bridging the digital divide, and we very much look forward to working with states to achieve that goal.
Well, Leslie, thank you for sharing how Qualcomm is working to connect Americans. We love hearing from companies like yours and all different types of companies from the tech and telecom ecosystem on Tech Talk. So I want to thank you again. And also I want to thank Congressman Latta for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about the work CTech is doing to ensure tech works for Americans, please visit us at AmericanInnovators.com. We'll see you again for one of our next installment of Tech Talks.